Okay, Sagittarius Rising, I've got two dates that you can consider as we lead up to this full moon in Aquarius. Now, the first one is the 25th of June, 2025, and the second was when we had the lunar eclipse in Aquarius back on February 17th. What does this all mean? I'm Sook Boy, you're awesome. Let's talk about it. Now, on the 25th of June, 2025, there was a conjunction between your chart ruler Jupiter and the Sun in your 8th house of Cancer. Since then, the Sun has orbited the entire zodiac and it's met back up with Jupiter as a conjunction in your 9th house of Leo. Now, the meat and potatoes of this cycle is basically crisis management. What have you learnt? What have you been through when it comes to shared assets, debts, taxes, potentially loss and grief? And how have you integrated that into somewhat of a new revitalized worldview? Has there been a selling off of assets or a relocation? Have you traveled extensively? Have you signed up for courses? Have you become a teacher? Are you teaching workshops, for example? What knowledge and wisdom have you alchemized and now you're using that knowledge and wisdom for your vision or your path forward? Wisdom, knowledge, skills have been accumulated in that time, probably from life experience, but are you communicating that effectively? Do you need to repackage this knowledge and wisdom in a different way? Or potentially you've already experienced some small amounts of success and it's actually time to scale your operations in some way. The second date was the 17th of February, and that was the eclipse that happened, the lunar eclipse that happened in your 3rd house of Aquarius. And this current full moon in Aquarius is actually resolving that cycle or asking you to pay attention to whatever was happening back then. Contracts and agreements that have everything to do with your local environment, short distance travel, relationship with your car, for example. Also legal matters, especially with regard to anything family related, siblings, extended family, or in-laws. Are you feeling stuck or stagnant or somewhat restless in your local community and developing some notion of wanderlust, wanting to travel, wanting to move, wanting to change your environment? Now, it might feel like you've been hitting your head up against a brick wall. You've been trying to communicate the same idea. Now, this lunation is actually asking you to pivot the way you communicate your idea. Change your approach to how you're relating to other people, how you're communicating to other people, especially if there's been something quite disturbing happening in some of those more important relationships. In other words, if you've been trying to communicate or get something across to another person, it's time to change the approach. Saturn is currently transiting your 5th house of children, self-expression, entrepreneurship, and creative projects or interests. That's ruling over this lunation that's happening in your 3rd house of Aquarius. What does that mean? Saturn is demanding you become more responsible with your finances and more responsible with the way you speak to others. But more than anything, more responsible with how sincere you are, how authentic you are with yourself. Not going to lie, the last year has been pretty challenging for Sagittarius Rising. Not all of you, this is an overview. But again, what have you learnt in that period? We don't just suffer, go through pain or some kind of crisis or transformation for nothing. Ultimately, we are trying to alchemize that suffering, pain or disruption so we can improve ourselves, grow and develop in some way. Right now, you're being asked to sit in the discomfort of not actually being understood. This discomfort is just episodic, and by the end of August, you'll actually have some kind of breakthrough when it comes to getting your ideas across or resolving a legal matter or understanding where you're going to travel next or where you're going to move to next or launching the business. So just sit tight for the time being. By sitting tight, I mean repackaging the message. Get a different angle. If it's not landing with them, why is that? Do you need to say something or do something a little bit differently for them to truly understand?